And welcome back to the Bottom Bins and to our transfer series where we are looking at some of the Premier League's most dubious transfers, some of the best transfers, even loan signings as well. So today, if you'd already seen our previous video where we looked at the best Premier League transfer signing, it's only right that we look at the worst as well. So today we're going to be bringing you the worst, well, in our opinion, the worst Premier League signing of all time. So Ashi, you can start us off.
Yeah, so starting off again with a Spurs man, but I feel like when we're talking about money, performances, and overall just the negative impacts a player has had in the club, I'm going to go with Tanguy Ndombele. Signed in 2019 for a club record fee at the time of £55 million plus 10 million in add-ons, so upwards of 65 million for a transfer, which again, like I said, transfer record fee for the club. It was massive at that stage, just coming out of the Champions League final and stuff. 91 games, 10 goals and 9 assists. So overall stats aren't that great. Talking for, again, only got released there a couple of weeks ago. 5 years and 91 appearances is not a lot for a club for the money that he came in at. Earned over £200,000 a week. Again, massive wage bill. Was at the time was earning more than the likes of Heung-min Son, Hugo Lloris, Harry Kane, all our main top players. Publicly rebuked a number of times for his bad attitude, his timekeeping, his laziness in training, everything that goes with it. He had been called out for numerous times under numerous managers at Tottenham. At one stage was forced to run during lockdown under head coach Jose Mourinho at the time, due to his lack of fitness, and which was clearly seen in training again by numerous coaches because he had been publicly called out for that. Went on loan on a couple of different occasions, went to the likes of Lyon, went to Napoli, Galatasaray, with Spurs paying most of the wage bills at that time. 3 different clubs, and not one of them decided to take up the option to buy him.
Yeah.
So you're talking 5 years, the money he came in for, the wages he was being paid every single week was the main reason why he got released about literally a month ago there. I think why he's the worst signing, in my opinion, is the negative attitude that he sort of brought around the club and around the training. Had a massive impact, because when managers are publicly coming out and slating their players, it's not nice to see, regardless of how much you love or how much you hate a player. Again, when he came in, I was so excited. Was one of the sort of best midfield talents at that stage at a young age. Clearly, when he did play and played well, the skill he had was insane. But when you look at his attitude and the lack of effort during games, it sort of showed why he didn't work under any manager. Not that I could see what he was like in training, but when managers again publicly coming out every week saying that they're only going to play players who want to play, players who train hard, players who are there on time, it was constantly going back to Ndombele and that sort of attitude. So I think at that time we were trying to transition into more of a world-class club, bringing in big money signings, and I think that was actually sort of a reverse. It set us back slightly because we were relying on that sort of a transfer to bring us to the next stage, where it actually put us a step back, which is probably one of the reasons why we have maybe died off in the last couple of years. Then that leads into Levy maybe being afraid to spend that big money again on younger players, or sort of players that we're hoping to break through to the team. So if we're talking about money wise and performance wise, he didn't really contribute anything to the club, and he's cost us hundreds of millions over the last 5 or 6 seasons.
Yeah, and I understand it from your point of view. Obviously, that's one you can link directly back to your football club.
Yeah.
You see the personal impact. Oran, what about yourself then? Who is your worst Premier League signing of all time?
Yeah, so like you said there, when you're talking about your own football club, it is easy to see these transfers and all as well. And you know, when we get into our honourable mentions, I'm sure Connor, me and you will have a lot of Manchester United signings that we could talk about. But for me, I'm talking about actually a former Manchester United player who returned to another one of his former clubs in the Premier League, which was Romelu Lukaku when he went back to Chelsea in 2021. You know, he had just left United and was off the back of an absolutely fantastic season in Serie A with Inter, helping them win the Scudetto. And Chelsea thought, you know, we could use Lukaku to push us to the Premier League. This was straight after they had just won the Champions League as well, so you know it looked like a win-win for both sides. They signed him for a hefty transfer fee, £95 million. And it turned out to be an awful, awful transfer. He went on to only score 8 goals in 26 appearances on his return to Chelsea, and he was reportedly on £325,000 a week. So thousands and thousands and thousands he's costing that club. He rejoined Inter actually the year after on loan, which, if that doesn't show you it's a sign of a bad transfer, I don't know what does. He didn't really have the same impact that he had when he was previously at Inter, and he betrayed the fans by wanting a permanent move to Juventus over Inter Milan. That deal then collapsed, and he ended up joining Roma on loan. It looked like all the potential suitors were gone for Lukaku. It actually looked like he was going to start the season with Chelsea again. Then Roma came in and took him under Jose Mourinho. Again, didn't necessarily do his best work in Italy, was consistently okay, scored a few goals, but again, Roma didn't want to exercise that deal to make that move permanent. And now you get to the present day. In the middle of his Roma term, he openly expressed his desire to play in the Saudi League. Said it's going to be one of the top 5 leagues, and that shows Lukaku's ambitions at this stage of his career. And no disrespect to the fella, but if you see his eating habits and all as well, in comparison to what he used to be like, he used to be a monster. He used to be one of the fastest players, in the Premier League when he was at the likes of Everton and West Brom. He was touted as like a reincarnation of Drogba. And then, he obviously he let himself go, let's be real, boys. But yes, he openly expressed his desire to play in Saudi Arabia. Again, it's not for footballing reasons, we all know that. And now he's back at Chelsea, in pre-season with Chelsea, but he is on the cusp of joining Napoli in a deal worth £30 million, which is actually his release clause when he signed an extension before joining Inter again on loan. So it hasn't worked out for either party. Best case scenario for Chelsea now is to just get him off the books. There is a potential of Osimhen coming in the opposite direction, which could be huge for Chelsea, but in terms of worst signings in Premier League history, Lukaku back to Chelsea definitely has to be up there.
Yeah, I agree with both of you, to be honest, and I think you both went for players with high transfer fees. Now the player that I've gone for isn't necessarily a high transfer fee, but I just think for where this player was at in his career at the time, this just completely derailed him to the point that he's actually not even playing football anymore. He's working on a building site. That player is Danny Drinkwater. So another Chelsea signing. I know I give Chelsea a lot of stick on this channel, and I know I probably call them out more than anybody ever does. But like this signing, I remember at the time even thinking like this made absolutely zero sense to me. Couldn't understand why Chelsea would sign Danny Drinkwater in the first place, considering around that period of time they had such a vast abundance of midfielders in the squad. And like realistically, now listen, I'm not trying to knock Danny Drinkwater, but yes, he won the Premier League with Leicester. He had a really, really good season, but I mean, what has Danny Drinkwater's career amounted to? I couldn't understand it at the time. I still don't understand it now with retrospect. He signed for £35 million in the summer of 2017. He only went on to make 12 appearances for Chelsea in 6 seasons. And actually, his contract was up after the 5th season, and they decided to renew it for another year. Like, that's just what Chelsea, that particular era of Chelsea Football Club was just completely baffling. He was reportedly on £180,000 a week as well. This is a player who was earning 180 grand a week and made 13 appearances across 6 seasons. Let that one sink in, folks. Ultimately, bang average footballer, had a one absolutely massive high point, and a high point for a lot of football fans when Leicester won the Premier League. But like, I'm going to keep coming back to the statement. I mean, realistically, what did his career ever amount to? And that's what I'm sticking to. So I guess we'll start the debate then. Oran, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, look, to be honest with you, boys, I don't think it's going to be much of a debate. I feel, that all three of us have our own reasons for why these players are the worst signings in Premier League history. I'm not going to disagree with Hashim for saying Ndombele is the worst signing in Premier League history. To him, he definitely is. Do you know what I mean? To Spurs, he definitely is as well. In terms of Chelsea, we both said players are Chelsea's transfer business hasn't necessarily been the best. Another one we could talk about, again, under the criteria of the previous episode, we couldn't really mention it, but, Moises Caicedo, he didn't have the best season. He signed for 120 million to Chelsea. Do you know what I mean? So when you talk about transfer fees and stuff, Chelsea haven't really hit the ground running there in the last few years. But no, look, I'm not going to disagree with any of the points that either of you have made. I feel you are right in what you are saying for the worst transfer in Premier League history. I'm going to completely leave this one up to the bottom bins fans.
Yeah, it's a bit subjective, this any topic that we talk about in these videos is subjective, really, because what could be the right answer to Oran or what's the right answer to Oshin is not necessarily the right answer to me, or it might be the right answer to somebody sitting at home who supports another football club and thinks, no, I can tell you we've definitely made bigger mistakes than that one. But I'm in the same boat as you, Oran. I don't really think there's much of a debate needed here. If you just want, we could sort of finish it off the way we finished the previous video. Maybe throw in a couple more honourable mentions there, maybe. Ashing.
I think, yeah, like, it's one of the things with these videos. The best thing about them is it's all opinionated. Like, we all have our own opinions. Like you said, like, I could name 10 players and not one of them mightn't be in Oran's top 10. You know what I mean? So I feel like with the likes of me going for Ndombele, that's in my club. Like, I could name 10 awful signings for my club. Then you think outside your club, it doesn't have the same impact to you. But the more you think about it, the more you hear other people's opinions. It's one of them ones where you could gather up 100 names and go, geez, they were all like top 10, top 100, like they're all really bad. So you talk about like Alexis Sanchez even going to Manchester United, like at the time was one of like most hyped footballers in the world at a stage, and you thought again that's the signing to bring United to the level where United should be. And look at the money spent there and the awful performances that came along with it, openly saying that he wanted to go back to Arsenal, things like that. Like, there's so much transfers you could talk about that just didn't work out, and there's going to be a whole lot more as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think one that sticks to my mind, and again, Oren, I know we were talking about the criteria as well, but a player that I have given a lot of abuse to over the last couple of years, Darwin Núñez. Is that ever going to come good? I personally, I don't think it is. I think he's pants. To be completely honest, I don't think he's a good footballer at all. Like, so, he would probably be my honourable mention. To be honest, what about yourself?
Yeah, well, look, obviously the obvious one there is Alexis Sanchez, and again, talking about criteria, you look at Anthony from Man United at the minute. He's not fit to lace any of them boys' boots. Man United have had quite a few, to be fair, but the one that sticks in my head is Alexis Sanchez. I'll fight in the hilt to anybody that says Paul Pogba is one of the worst signings in Premier League history, though, because he's definitely not. But there's much worse than Paul Pogba, but Alexis Sanchez, for me, has to be the worst.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a quick 2-minute chat about Pogba as well. I personally don't think Pogba was one of the worst signings in Premier League history, but I can definitely understand the argument that he did not reach the levels that he was.
I fully agree.
That he was expected to. He still contributed a lot to Manchester United, still won trophies at Manchester United, so I wouldn't necessarily say he's one of the worst of all time. I think obviously people will always come back to the price tag, and they'll turn around and say, bought for 88 million or whatever it was, and sold for zero.
Like, it's one of the ones where, like, when he played well, one of the best centre mids in the world, when his attitude wasn't as at its best and a bit injury prone, picking up injuries here and there and coming back maybe not even fully fit, or again at that time you never know, being forced to play when not fully fit. There's a lot of different like factors that impact that, but definitely he's not anywhere near my worst signing in Premier League history, because like you said, won trophies, played relatively well, still had good stats for United and stuff. It was just the level he should have been at. He probably could have been, with his potential, classified as the best centre mid in the world at a stage, but just didn't reach that level. So that's all it was. It's probably just a player who didn't reach the peak potential he should have.
And then you talk about transfer fees and all as well. You look at Harry Maguire for 80 million. Again, he's not worth 80 million, and I always said it, but at the time when he was signing for Manchester United, he was worth 80 million to Leicester. Do you know what I mean? And to take him from Leicester, you had to pay that money. It's the same with Jared Branthwaite now. He's worth 80 million or 70 million, whatever they're looking, to Everton. It mightn't be his market value, but that's just the way it is. But, you can look at Harry Maguire and say he's one of the worst, the likes of Nicolas Pepe as well. And it's the timing of them transfers as well. Like, we see not necessarily in this summer transfer window because there hasn't been many huge big money deals, but in the last 3 years, a transfer of 60, 70, 80 million, that's a normal transfer fee now. But
Yep.
when the likes of Nicolas Pepe was going, Paul Pogba was going, £89 million was the world record fee when we paid it for Manchester for Paul Pogba to return. And then, a year later or whatever, you've got Neymar, you've got Suarez, all these boys going for way, way more. So I suppose it's all to do with time in there as well and how market values have changed.
Yeah, definitely. And, the one thing we consistently say now is it's definitely a seller's market now.
Yeah.
If you are a football club and you have an asset there, it's like you said, Oran, it's what that asset is worth to your particular football club. And that is why we have these massive and inflated transfers. But yeah, look, I think that'll probably do it for this one. That was our debate on the worst Premier League transfer of all time. Please have your own say. Comment under the video, like, subscribe, make sure you're following all of our social platforms, and please look out for the next one. Thank you for watching. Keep it bottom bins.
Keep it on
The
bits.
bottom bins.